Hello, hello, hello. It's Monday. All
Yes.
right. So, Jeff has not grown a beard and become a Italian guy from New York. Jeff had something to, or at least from the New York area, up there,
That's right. Just north of New York.
northern New York.
That's
Jeff
right.
had something to do tonight, so we got our old friend Kevin, the comic doctor, making a return to help us
How you
out
doing?
tonight. How you doing, Kevin?
Good. Thanks for having me, Shelby.
All right, let's do a little intro here. Okay, man. It is great to see you again. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Yes, it's been a while since I've been on the show, but I've been pretty busy since.
I'm sure. I'm sure everybody needs those books cleaned and pressed and all that good stuff.
But I don't feel so bad though. I saw a post yesterday on Facebook. A fellow was saying after 7 months of waiting, his books at CCS were finally being looked at. So I don't feel quite so bad. No one's waiting 7 months for books to get pressed, but
Uh, I used that service one time, and it did take about 5 months, and then they damaged a book.
I've been hearing a lot of horror stories. A lot of horror
Yeah,
stories.
yeah.
They're growing. When a company grows, by leaps and bounds, and they're bringing in new staff, there's always that learning curve there. And unfortunately, yeah, they're learning on people's books, and not
Yeah,
my
go out
books.
and go out buy a stack of old books and
Yeah,
practice on those.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
But
my turnaround's not quite that long. Thank goodness.
Well, I know, and Jeff's not here, so I don't want to spoil anything he might have. I know he sent you something to clean up for him,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
a Spider-Man, I believe.
Yeah, first Punisher. I think it's back there somewhere. I'm not going to get up and go looking for it, but I
Yeah,
mean,
no.
yeah, it's an ASM 129 first Punisher. It was a lower to mid grade book. Now I say it's a solid mid grade book. It
That's
had
great.
Yeah, I think he'll be pretty happy with the results. He'll be going off to Sarasota probably end of this week, at the latest early next. But I think it'll be off this Thursday or Friday. So yeah, he should be pretty happy with that.
Well, that's pretty good turnaround
Yeah.
time. 'Cause I know he told me when he sent it to you. So yeah, that's a good turnaround time.
One book, if it usually one book, and if it's a high value book, I'll get it through quick. But when I get like 300 books dropped on my lap of modern books, then unfortunately they have to wait in the queue, and it takes a bit of time. But like currently, I'm working on invoices from late July to August right now, so I'm behind. I'm pretty
Oh
behind.
wow, so that is
Yeah,
about 6 months ago. Cool.
yeah. Well,
Let's say hi to a few people. Of course,
sure.
Los Cruces, the first person in the room,
Oh,
always
James,
one of the big supporters. Three Beam, three, yeah,
3B man, Luke.
3B man. Thank you. Couldn't get it out. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tim, of course. Him and I have been talking a little bit today, and Comic Crack, Evening Comic Book Fiends. Oh, we got Matthew Fox, of course, always joining us every Monday. So glad to see you, Matthew. So yeah, Jeff had some due tonight, so I think we got someone amazing here that's filling in for him.
I'll
We
do my
got our buddy
best.
Kevin and stuff. So really quick, shameless plug. I did just drop a little 4-part series on wet cleaning comics. I don't see a lot of videos out there on wet cleaning. And the only videos I see is from a person. Well, there's a couple of them, a couple of people. Um, the main one, of course, is Immaculate Comics. I bought some of his products. I got some old comics and practiced with. And you can actually check out that 4-part series where I take this book here that had a super, I mean, the back of the book was literally folded almost onto the front. It had
Mm-hmm.
such a big spine roll, and like on the back, like there was almost 2 inches of pages seen.
Nice
And
fan.
yeah, but I got the spine roll out. We cleaned it up quite a bit. And yeah, overall, it's not going to be a perfect book. It's not going to be a 9.8 or anything. We probably took it from a 2 to a 3 maybe. But yeah.
Looks pretty nice.
Mylar always makes things look a little nicer, but in the videos, I do have some close-up pictures and things like that. So I was really lucky and bought a small stack of these. I love these Walt Disney books. So I bought a small stack of them and been going through there practicing and stuff. I know you and I and I don't want to turn this into a
tutorial
cleaning,
video
episode or anything. I know you and I talked a little bit about it. Oh, you got a little compliment there.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
So, that's definitely one of our highest rated shows. So yeah, we're happy to have you back on.
Thank you.
You know, I know we talked a little bit about the difference in wet cleaning and dry cleaning, and I'll just be honest with you. I don't have the patience for dry cleaning. It takes such time to really sit down and really work with something and stuff. Man, when I can just wet something and wipe it down,
spray it down, wipe it, done.
Wipe it, it's done.
If it works, great. Yeah, I know. And there is that the temptation sometimes, right, to add fluids to move things along a little quicker. But again, if you don't know what you're doing, and if you do it incorrectly, then you can cause more problems than before you started. So, anyways, yeah, I personally don't get into wet cleaning. I have done some wet cleaning for myself, but I don't offer that. It just is another can of worms I don't want to get into.
It is, and I'll be honest, is I did have these books had and you understand too, because Golden Age books have a bit of a thicker cover, and there is a lot of stress lines along there.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was the cleaning solution kind of absorbed under the gloss, and it did end up leaving like some staining.
Yeah.
He's able to press it flat, and like I said, I don't think that's going to really if you were to grade them,
right,
I don't think it'd be anything that would detract mainly from the grade, or it's not enough to say, oh, you took a 6 down to a 3 or anything, right? I mean, we're talking about 3.0 4.0 books,
sure,
anyway. But yeah, so I did notice that, but anyway, all right,
live and learn. You're gonna, you got to play around with it, and you'll have some successes, you'll have some failures, but you're going to learn along the way, and you'll become more apt to attacking other projects or different books in future, right? So,
yeah, I'm not ready for a Hulk 181, but
nah.
We're talking about being able to buy stuff for $5.
Yeah,
so
it's fun.
It is fun. It is fun. I love learning.
Yeah,
that's what. It's one reason why I got into this, is learning how to do video editing and, things like that. So,
yeah.
All right. Okay. So tonight we are continuing with part 4, and I'm going to share, my screen here, and we'll jump right into it. So we've been going through the origin of comic books, and we've gone through parts 1 through 3, where we've looked at things prior to 1935. We've looked at the beginning of what we think of as the modern comic book, meaning in terms of size and format. We looked at pulp heroes and their influence, and now we are up to Superman, 1938. So we cannot undervalue, I think, the influence Superman has had in superhero comics. So just a really quick summary, because we did do an episode on Siegel and Schuster, but I pulled some of these things from interviews and stuff that Siegel and Schuster had done over the years. So Siegel and Schuster, for the creation of Superman, drew from a lot of sources. One source I'd never heard of was they had said in an interview Philip Wiley's 1930 novel Gladiator, which introduced a contemporary version of the Superman concept. Have you heard of that novel before?
I personally have not, but I have something to say on the second point when you get there.
Oh yeah, Doc Samson and Hercules as strong men.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, interject.
Well, it's just funny because, as you know, I teach film studies at my high school here, and one of the early film, when the advent of film, you weren't seeing movies or storylines; you would just see events or famous people at the time, right? And so, one of a very common thing that early film makers would show audiences were strongmen. And so these strong men would come out with the little bikini bottoms and they'd flex and kind of like me right now with my big muscles
Right, right.
and and I'm talking like the 20s, right? So this would have obviously influenced Siegel and Schuster and their development of Superman. I think I saw a documentary with them, and they referred back to these early films of these strong men. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
They did. I did see a little bit about, and we talked about that a little bit. I think last episode talking about how pulp influenced radio serials and of course the movie serials, right? You would have these small 12 episode serials that would premiere before the actual movie at movie
Right.
theaters. And so I'm sure that a lot of those influenced some of them because they would have been kids, at that time going and seeing these.
Yeah. And again, predating the actual movies as we know it today. Again, there were no stories, there were no scripts. It was just, oh, there's a train going by, or look, the president's coming to town, or we're going to the circus, and here's the bearded lady, and there's the strong man. And so you'd see the strong man. Again, those images of Superman, even just the image you chose here, is very similar to some of those tableaus they would create in these early films. Pretty
Yeah,
cool.
well, yeah, and I love the Max Fleischer
Oh yeah.
cartoons. Those are just, oh, I
Yeah.
mean, there's a couple of documentaries out there on how they did their cartoons, and they would actually have people act out
Yeah.
the scenes, and then cartoonists would go over them with
Right.
a projected image. That's why they uh are such free flowing and smooth images. But yeah, if anybody gets a chance out there in comic book land, definitely go check out. It's only like 12 episodes I think they did with Superman, but they are definitely some of the best.
Yes, definitely. I agree with you.
Let's see. So Zorro and Shadow with kind of the secret identities. Doc Savage, which we talked about the last episode, whose first name is Clark. So I'm not sure if that's a direct ripoff or not. And Siegel's early dream of being a reporter and having crush on girls who didn't even know he existed. That plays into the creation of Superman. And for me, it's just the description itself of a mild mannered Clark Kent, tended to resonate with viewers, with readers, right? I think just adding those adjectives at the beginning of that name, allowed people to be able to identify, right? This person who is quiet and meek, and the girls don't pay attention to him, and definitely I think that resonates with a lot of even today I feel like that would resonate with yeah, and you see that with at least a lot of the Marvel characters, right?
Totally.
Where each of them have some kind of flaw. Thor's alter ego is
Blake.
Blake,
Daniel Blake.
who has a cane.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Stark always, has the war injury. Peter Parker, the meek, nerdy kid.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, definitely those ideas are much broader than just they touch something with us culturally than just the comic book.
Well, Superman was certainly, and Clark Kent was an archetype for all the others that came after. That's for sure. Even within DC itself, right? They all look to Superman.
Yeah. So really quickly on how Superman got published, I found this also in some interviews. And we talked a little bit about it in my Siegel and Schuster episode, but I just want to walk us through it really quick. If you ever read Action Comics #1, it's very disjointed, and that's because they originally pitched it as a syndicated strip, which syndicated strips were a lot more lucrative in those days. You know, if you were able to get into a national paper where things were printed, you know, in 30,000 newspapers across the nation, you got a little piece of that from each of those sales versus comic books, which just like today, the publishers own those creations. Sheldon Meyer recalls that he could not get McClure Syndicate to pick up the strip. Thus, he turned to MC Gaines, whom we've talked about in a previous episode. Gaines also passed on the strip, but believed in Meyer's instincts. Gaines, always the businessman, suggested to offer it as a comic book rather than a strip because they could get more printing out of it and more money. So, you know, more money for the publishers, you know, if we did it as a strip. Major Nicholson, whom we talked about, the first, really the founder of DC Comics, was working on his fourth title that he was either going to call Action Funnies or Action Comics. But soon the Major left, selling his interest in the company. So right before Action Comics #1 got published, he decided to get out of it, was tired of the headache, and you know, but we talked about that on a previous episode too, where you know, he seemed to have no regrets in life. Went on to do a lot of other publications in the pulp industry, and apparently died a pretty satisfied man in 1968, I believe.
Okay.
Gaines took the Superman strip to Harry Donfeld, who persuaded the editor, Vince Sullivan, to add the character to the upcoming Action Comics. There was so little faith in Superman that after the first issue of Action Comics, Superman was not featured on the cover of the next 4 issues. It wasn't until the sales came in several months later that then Superman started being shown prominently on the cover. And I found this early strip here on the side, and I was really here on this strip down at the bottom left. You may not be able to read it, but it says the passing of his foster parents greatly grieved Clark Kent, but it strengthened a determination that had been growing in his mind. So it's almost like a Batman origin originally, where it was the death of his parents that pushed him to become Superman. And of course, that origin changes. The radio syndication had a lot to do with the way Superman is perceived. Like, you know, up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, you know, all that. The character of Lois Lane was first, you know, radio creation, I believe, or at least Jimmy Olsen was. So I found that interesting. All right. So some of the influence of Superman. So it did take a while for Superman success to resonate. One of the earliest costume heroes to appear was a character called the Arrow. Hey, Todd. You are just in time, of course. And Jeff's not here with me tonight. We got our old friend, the comic doctor, in the house, making a house call, as it were.
That's right. Hey, Todd, how's it going?
Helping me out. But yeah, I found this. I'll be honest with you. Maybe I'd heard of this character and forgot about it. But I had never heard of the Arrow until I read this. Until I was working on this episode. I agree with you, 3 Beam Man. Hey, Thomas Grant. So we got a lot of, looks like are getting some new faces that Kevin brought over. Hey, please give a like, comment, subscribe. Definitely give me a sub up. I've dropped videos all the time during the week. So it really helps me out a lot. And I appreciate it. And of course, anybody in the description below, I have the Comic Doctors YouTube channel in the description below. So y'all jump over there, give him a sub. We both really appreciate it.
Certainly do.
But yeah, had you ever heard of this character, the Arrow, from Funny Pages?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not.
Yeah, it is a new one to me too. We did talk last episode about the Crimson Avenger, which was an early one. And then this was an interesting story. So Victor Fox, an accountant for DC Comics, after seeing the success Superman, decided to create his own comic company and actually set up an office in the same building as DC Comics.
There you go.
That was kind of funny.
All the talents upstairs.
That's right. And he contracted not
Will Eisner.
Will Eisner. Yeah, I think I misspelled that. I think I said contacted. My misspelling there. Will Eisner of the Eisner Iger Studios to create a superhero. And that character we're showing over there on the right would be called Wonder Man. Again, maybe I knew of this and forgot about it, but he only was in one issue, one appearance, and then DC sued them, sued Fox pretty quickly.
In the same building.
In the same building. And,
down the hall.
Yeah, I'm sure that wasn't too hard to prove in court, right?
No.
That, hey, this guy was an accountant of ours. He moved in a couple of floors below us, published this, but yeah, one issue, one and done. But Wonder Man, which of course is a Marvel character name today.
No, yeah.
So, but I thought that was very interesting. And I have some very fond memories of Will Eisner. I met him back in the early 90s, and
wow,
super generous man, super generous with his time and such. And we stayed in contact a little bit over the years. So
that's cool.
Yeah, very generous person. But about the same time as Wonder Man, DC published Detective Comics 27, which is, of course, the first appearance of Batman. All right, Bats and Mystery Men. So Batman is created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger. Batman's claim was he had this gadget-laden utility belt and carried a .45 automatic back in those days, and wasn't afraid to use it. It wasn't until Detective Comics 33 that Batman's origin was revealed, and then in Detective 38 was the introduction of Robin the Boy Wonder, which kicked off the kind of the sidekick boom. Fox would produce another hero in Wonder World Comics, number 3. So how frequently these comic book title names changed. It was just Wonder Comics, right? And then changed it to Wonder World Comics right after issue 1. But he introduced a character called the Flame that was also created by Eisner, drawn by Lou Fine, one of the greatest Golden Age artists there is, next to Schoenberg, in my opinion. And he would get a sidekick in issue 30 called Flame Girl, but the series would end 3 issues later. Fox created a second second book entitled Mystery Men Comics and introduced the Green Mask. Yes, yep, that Batman one. I actually did a short episode. I did a short video on that on my channel. So see, y'all are missing all this great stuff where I do some comic news and like to get interaction and stuff, people. But yeah, that Batman number 1, 1.8 million. So
do you think they changed the name to Wonder World Comics because of the lawsuit?
It seemed to be pretty common, though. It seemed to me, I noticed a lot when we talked about some of those early funny books. There's a lot of name changes. Maybe it
Right.
was I don't know, just maybe something new, right? You're on because we're still talking about newsstands on the street, things like that, right? As your predominant means of getting these books out there. And maybe just a title change, right? Kind of like our view of number ones, where Marvel never really runs a series more than about 30 to 50 issues nowadays and then reboots it because number ones sell.
That's it.
And maybe that new title boosted sales a little bit. But Fox created a second title. Now, I actually did know about these. Mystery Men comics, my memory does come back to me on these books. Wonder World, I'll be honest, I'd never heard of either. Or maybe if I had, I'd forgotten it. But Mystery Men comics introduced the Green Mask by Walter Theme. I'm probably mispronouncing that horribly. But the Green Mask started as the central character, and there's a little backup story, a 4-page backup story with another hero called the Blue Beetle, which was done by artist Charles Wachowski, under the pen name Charles Nicholas. And that is the Blue Beetle we think of today. That character goes all the way back to 1938. And it's different incarnations. But yeah, the Blue Beetle, just almost as old as Superman and Batman. Which I think is great. And one thing I want to point out too is here on this Wonder World comics, this was 1939, and notice they're already doing the war stuff, right, against Nazis and everything. Even though we wouldn't enter the war for several years, I saw a panel with Howard Chaykin that talked about the influence of Jewish culture in early Golden Age comics. And we were getting news back then at that, of the Nazis and the persecution of the Jews and such. And all these people had some Jewish ancestry. And so that was influencing what they were putting into the comic books as early as 1938. And I find that, again, so interesting.
People knew what was happening over there. I mean, the Canadians got in, the Brits got in 39, right? The Americans didn't join in for a few years, but the atrocities started happening early on, and so these men that were creating these books, who were living in the United States, they had family that were over there enduring this, right? And they heard all the stories and saw the threat, what was happening with the Nazi Party and the others, but. Yeah, so they obviously wanted to get their voice heard, and they wanted to show the world what was happening in their own way through their own art form, right? Which was the comic book.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah. And it's something we always try to do on this channel is try to highlight how culture influences comics. And the way that we look at comics, even today, we've had like several recalled books, because of people of Islamic origins, putting their little messages in comic books and stuff, which, I think Marvel and DC try to stay away from any kind of political or religious overtones with their books. You don't want to miss that $1 you might get from a certain group, but definitely they've become a lot more culturally rainbowed, right, with Islamic Muslim characters, such as Kamala Khan, Asian characters and such. So, yeah. And again, I think that's a, shift in the culture too.
Yeah. They want to appeal to as many people as possible. Not
Definitely.
just, yeah.
Amazing and Marvelous. So Centaur Publications introduced Amazing Man, whom I'd never heard of, but I love that cover. I love that cover. Is that the coolest cover? Amazing Man Comics, that great logo across the top and that face there hidden behind the words. But it's created by Bill Everett in Amazing Man Comics #5. And for some unknown reason, I couldn't find out that was actually the first issue of Amazing Man Comics. There was no issue 1 through 4. Which we know is slightly common, just like you were talking about Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel premiered in Wiz Comics #2.
Yeah.
There was not a Wiz Comics #1
That's right.
Published. So again, I'm not sure if it was maybe a sales tactic or maybe it took over from another book that changed names. But yeah, there's no Amazing Man Comics 1 through 4. And then, of course, Timely published Marvel Comics. And then in issue 2, they changed the name to Marvel Mystery Comics. In late 39, and introduced the Human Torch, who was created by Carl Burgos, which would go on to be an influential artist in comics for years to come. Then, of course, the Submariner, created by Bill Everett. Marvel Mystery Comics later introduced characters such as the Angel and Kazar. And Kazar just got a new #1 on the stands last week. So this is a character that's been around, since 1939. Fox introduced a third publication entitled Fantastic Comics in 1939, which featured Samson based on the biblical character, and later his sidekick David. And these were done by artist Alex Bloom. MLJ Magazines published Top Notch Comics #1 in December of 1939 and featured the Wizard, the man with the super brain. Reminds me of myself. But yeah, that and again, I showed this excuse me, Marvel Comics #11 over there, which very prominently on the cover, has the Nazi swastika on the cover, and this was in early 1940s.
Yeah.
When that comic was published. So again, such an influence of what was going on in the world being carried over to comics. So that will actually bring us to the next episode, which we'll talk about because it's going to be a bigger discussion, is the 1940s, the boom year of comics. So about you, I know you've probably seen more comics than a lot of us have ever owned. Have you come across a lot of these Golden Age books? I mean,
yeah, I've worked on a few of the early Marvel comics and some of these lesser known comics as well too. There are a lot of enthusiasts out there who look for these books and search for these books, and oftentimes they're not in the best of shape. Folded pages, tears, rips. You mentioned earlier the one book you were working on had a really severely rolled spine. So I do those types of repairs on them to make them a little more presentable before getting graded. So, I have seen a lot of these books. Actually, not necessarily the ones you showed today, but from this vintage. Yeah, quite often. And it's fun to peruse the books too. I don't get a lot of work done sometimes when these books come in because I end up reading them.
I don't blame you. You. I would love to, wow. Like I said, if I had known about it, I've forgotten over the years, but I am just struck by this Amazing Man comics and that logo and stuff. I would love to own anything like that. Top Notch, I do remember in my memory. I do have a friend of mine that has a full run of Marvel Mystery Comics.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been working on, I think every one of his. Now that excludes the number one, right? Marvel Comics #1, just the Marvel Mystery Comics. I think he's now got every one of them above a 9.2.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to find the books at all, but to find them in that kind of a grade, it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing,
Yeah, he's invested a lot of money. He started with like 7 O's and then he just worked himself up. Yeah, I'd love to maybe, even the Mystery Man comics. Look at that logo. It's just, the color, the art.
But that Mystery Man comics, that doctor in the middle there, he's reminiscent of a Batman comic I had. I forget the issue, but it looks just like that. Same outfit, expression on his face, the whole 9 yards. I got to dig that out now.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think they influenced each other too. I know there were a lot of lawsuits going back and forth, companies. This is a very a creative time, a lot of new ideas, and people were, seeing success around them. So they borrowed ideas, obviously, to try to, find that success themselves. And so a lot of lawsuits took place. But in the end, a lot of these people influenced each other, right? It's natural. That goes back with any art form. If you're looking at even like at painters, if you look at something like a Vincent van Gogh, I'm not going to do an art history lesson now, but his early work looked nothing like his later work, but he was inspired by the other expressionists and impressionists that were around him at that time. Right? So that influenced his work, and then he in turn inspired other artists, right? So the same thing happens with comic books, like young Steve Ditko, Jack Kirby, those guys, they were around when all these early, DC books were being made, obviously. And so when they had the opportunity to create their own superheroes, they, I'm sure, looked back and borrowed some ideas, the Flame, the Human Torch, I would think so. Things like that.
Yeah. And it's, our perception is limited until someone comes along and introduces something new, right? Looking through some of those interviews about Superman, I know that I saw one interview where they said that they thought that they actually didn't like the cover of Action Comics #1 because they felt that readers would think it's too impossible a man could lift a car above his head,
right?
And that was one of the reasons why they didn't have Superman on the cover for the next couple of issues,
Right.
And you see all these characters, they're not flying yet. They're leaping. Right? Flying's not a concept yet. Until actually
the TV show, right?
Is actually the radio. The radio
was the radio show that showed him flying?
That introduced him flying, yeah.
Okay.
So, then we have characters that start flying. Even when we were talking about the early formation of comic books, just happened to be a salesman that thought, hey, wait a minute, you could take like a legal size piece of paper and fold it in half and staple it, and you could print on the front and back and save money.
Mm-hmm.
Because comics were in all different sizes prior to that, and they weren't stapled. They were glued. Pages were glued together because no one thought about folding a freaking book in half, and stapling it. And that was the beginning of our modern, modern comic book. It hasn't changed since. It's just a large sheet of paper with,
graphics,
four sections that's folded in half and stapled. Prior to that, you had thick cardboard covers, things like that, and they were glued. Ironically, it makes Action Comics 1 more valuable since he's on the cover. True. You actually see less money for Action number 2, 3, and 4 because he's not on the cover, even though he's in the book.
That's right. Then as
you
soon as he's back on the cover again, the price pops.
the price just
like crazy.
goes crazy.
Yep.
So, and that same person I was talking about, it's actually Richard, who owns Bedrock City Comics. He has the original art to Action Comics number 13.
Oh wow, it's a big one.
The cover, yeah, it's the oldest known original art in existence to an Action Comics cover.
Wow.
And it is amazing to look
I
at.
bet.
He
I
has
bet.
it hanging in his office, and every time I go to that store, I always say, "Can I look at it again?"
I bet.
It's an amazing condition. It cost him $350,000.
No. Wow.
And he actually bought that because he got outbid on the original art for the last page of Hulk 180.
I think I'd want the Superman war art. I think. I don't know.
Well, the last page of Hulk 180 is
I know. First Wolverine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
and that's funny. You mentioned Wolverine too, right? Do you remember that comic book in the 80s called Badger? Right? Like a total, you know, no, I wouldn't say rip off, but totally inspired by Wolverine, right? And Logan's popularity.
yeah.
So again, right, we still see that to this day. Artists still borrowing ideas from each other and you know in their creations. So
well, even Faust, you know, with like the dual claws and stuff, you know, from the underground comics. But yeah, definitely you see, and again, you know, a lot of these seem like similar characters because they were until someone else came up with something else.
yeah,
Right. And you have these very cultural motifs, right? Fire versus water. So with Timely, you have Submariner and the Human Torch, right? I mean, that is a motif that who knows, been around forever in human history, right?
right.
Excuse me. You know, and it's not until other people you know, come up with something else that you know, you see these things change. So yeah, very interesting. Well, and even Marvel
Totally.
Comics, think about that. It was due to the atomic era of the 1950s. Because how did everybody get their superpowers? You know, radiation,
Science.
gamma rays, radiated spider, cosmic rays, things like that. And actually, I didn't mention that. It would have been a long episode. But the way most of these people got their superpowers in these people I presented here was through Vita rays. And that was a very popular thing in of that time was vitamins and and stuff. So that's where they drew their powers from, was these these ingestion of vitamins and such, which was becoming popular as we were going through the industrial age of processing foods.
That's right.
And introducing things like vitamins to the public and aspirin and all these things that we didn't have before, right? People were still, they still do today, but they, were canning their food. They were growing their own food. Food processing really did not come about until the turn of the 19th to 20th century, And then laws were legislated around processing of foods, and canning became, talking about our metal cans like we see our vegetables in today, became something that could be mass produced in the early 20th century, right?
Yep.
So all these things influenced how these heroes were born.
Yeah, the world.
Popeye, there you go. Yep, Popeye eating spinach. That's a perfect example.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, the world's understanding what nutrients are, and like you're saying, again, the science of the time influencing what was happening in the books. Right. It makes complete sense. And again, going back to the war, using the villain, the ultimate villain being the Nazis or the Italians at the time or the Japanese, that makes total sense too, because they were the real villains at that time, in the eyes of the world. So you don't need a Lex Luthor when you've got an Adolf Hitler. Like, he's the one, right?
Exactly. And yeah, we talked about that in a previous episode of of a lot of your early pulp heroes were detectives and fighting crime syndicates and things like that. But again, that was part of the times, right? You had GI Men, and you had Al Capone, and which was the 19 teens and 1920s. That influenced what the pulp heroes were. Hello, Ruby. I have no idea what that is, so I'm not going to share it. But yeah, so it's quite interesting, and that's one of the things we try to do on the show is draw those parallels.
Do you think what was happening in the movie theaters at that time? Because now I mentioned earlier the strong man. I'm talking early teens into the 20s. But when the movies actually started having storylines, as in the 1930s, James Cagney, all these huge gangster films and detective films were huge. The Maltese Falcon in the early 40s, things like that. Those obviously influenced the comic books too, right? Like,
yeah, I think all of them influence was, like you just said, we're drawing from each other, right? Pulp magazines was influencing movies, and movies was influencing, comic books, and and it's just a large.
And now finally, the comic books are influencing the movies, through and through,
influencing the movies,
big time.
Well, and you had that, I don't want to. I feel, with this series, I'm not focusing on any single character. So I think if I want to talk about Superman and its influence of the radio programs, the early TV shows, things like that, and that'd be a whole new episode. I'm taking kind of a general view of the origin of comics. But we did have a Batman serial in the 1940s, which was really bad, but it was. I think there's a Captain Marvel one too, wasn't it?
Would be surprised. Oh, I don't know. Captain Marvel. After that, I don't even want to talk about this now. You're doing another episode, but I believe after the lawsuit, Disney, DC took over Fawcett. They basically owned Fawcett, right? So I don't know if they would have released it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We did talk a little bit about, you did have Buck Rogers and you had Flash Gordon, which were pulp characters that were, carried over to the movies and stuff. And then, I think maybe they came in comic books first, then the movies. I'd have to look at the dates of all that, but. Yeah, I definitely believe those three genres.
I believe they were pulps first, then they were like TV, like serials, and then eventually 1950s, those serials either were moved to television or they made TV, low budget TV serials, right?
Yeah.
Which then influenced, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and all the rest, right? So here we go again. It's I love it. I love how it just continues onwards and onwards,
Yeah, definitely. And that's definitely something I want to highlight with this. And I appreciate that you are recognizing that to show how what we even have today over 100 years later. I mean, that's crazy to think about.
Yeah, creation requires influence, right? I talk about that in one of my classes, my art classes. Creation requires influence. We need to be influenced by what we see around us to create new works of art. And so it's what was happening at the time of these golden age marvels was influencing the artists at that time, and then the young people who were absorbing all this or taking all this in. Then it meant a lot to them, just like it means a lot to us, right? And then they create in turn, right? So it's cyclical. Yep, it's cool.
Well, yeah, and again, I'm not sure if it's so much cyclical versus it's just a straight line that we can draw, right? From these, and it's one influencing the other from the others. I guess if you think of it in that terms, then it's maybe cyclical, but yeah,
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very interesting to me. I love, even though probably didn't do well in history in school, but I do. Yeah, if it's a history I like, I like comic books.
No, you know what? We oftentimes in school history, unless you have a really good teacher, we kind of zone out, right? I mean, luckily I had a couple of good ones that kept me really interested in, and especially art history of all things. I just found that absolutely fascinating.
I loved art history. We could talk for hours about that. You were talking about the Impressionists, but first thing that came to my mind was things like Dadaism with Picasso, and people hated freaking Picasso and the way his paintings looked, and this cubist mentality, because even if you look at you look at Renaissance paintings, and they're very whenever I go to museums and I have a chance to grab someone's ear, I'm like, get up close.
Oh, yeah.
Look at the way the paint is put onto the canvas. Look at how it's different, right? Picasso, layers and layers of paint, thick paint on canvases. Not even talk about the cubist in the cubist portrayal on the canvas, just the way he was laying the paint. People,
the methodology, the way he was applying it, it was different.
People were rejecting it. It's like, you can't do that, because if you look at Renaissance paintings, the paint is so thin on there, right? It's only what is needed, and you capture this very realistic view. And I also studied archaeology, and if you look at the habitats influenced, what people had on hand in terms of resources of what they created their tools from and art from and things like that, also influences it. So yeah, it's so interesting to me to see that, and yeah, more so than in art, and the way that changes.
And that love can go from comic books, right? Like I said, back to fine art as well too. It's people. How can you draw correlations between this and the other? I'm like, well, there's a lot, very similar development, really, if you think about it. They've gone along the same kind, like you said, same line. They might be doing, the end product might be something different, but the progress is certainly there, right?
Well, even the way that heroes, like we looked at on these covers, very minimalistic art in a lot of ways, right?
Yep.
And very true to human anatomy and movements and stuff, unlike the exaggerated gestures and features that we have today. Very steeped in realism.
But I guarantee you, if you were to look, and I'm sure we can find it, you will find artists today creating artwork similar to that of the 1930s and 40s. It always, it's like they say, fashion repeats itself. The bell bottoms were around in the 1970s. It came back in the 1990s. Similar art styles as well too. The style of Steve. One of my favorites is Steve Ditko. I love Steve Ditko's simple artwork. And do I love Alex Ross or Todd McFarlane's work? Like Todd McFarlane's work on Spawn. Spawn #1 is a beautiful. If you open that up, it's what?
It's a beautiful book.
It's Renaissance, right? It's like wow. And I love them both, but there's something to be said about the simplicity of that artwork you just showed, and the covers I love it. Just like you said, I love those covers. And
probably the closest is like All Red. With his simplistic art is probably most reminiscent to me. But then Alex Ross, whom actually gets people to model for him.
That's right. High realism. Right?
High realism, yeah.
So you have a whole gradation of that. You have from very simplistic all the way up to almost I wouldn't say photorealism, but pretty darn close. With Alex Ross's work, and I love it all. And certain styles are going to be more popular at different times. That's the kind of the way it goes, right? But the beautiful thing about comic book art is if you go to the comic book store, it's all right there ahead of you. But isn't it funny when McFarlane hit this newsstands and his work was so different at that time, everyone started trying to copy his work. They tried to copy his work, right? It was impersonators.
Well, I mean, and you and I were there at that time, and I owned a comic book store, when there wasn't a McFarlane.
Yeah.
And people actually rejected a lot of his exaggerated Spider-Man looks and the knees above the ears and such. But it resonated with some people, and because Marvel had a morgue file of this is the way Spider-Man's supposed to look. It's supposed to look like John Romita, did it.
Yep.
Just
like right there on your screen. Look at them all. Right?
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
We had our typical Spider-Man, and I think if you look at Spider-Man today, you got kind of a morphing of it all. You still see elements of Romita in there, but you see probably a little more, I think, McFarlane-esque style in there. It transcends and it keeps going, right? But again, artists will pick and choose what they want. New young artists will be inspired, and they'll hopefully create their own unique style and bring it forward, right? But
definitely.
Anyways, this conversation is going in a whole different place, so that's probably not what you want.
No, this is great. This is what it's about, is to stimulate conversation. So, all right. Well, we have been at this for about an hour. I want to thank you again, sir.
Thank you
for joining me tonight, being my lovely co-host, and
yes, your wingman.
Help me out. Well, I couldn't. I didn't think you'd be able to. You were one of my first choices, and I was like, oh man, he's an hour ahead of me. He's probably busy, and Jeff didn't let me know he couldn't make it to about 3:00 this afternoon. So, but I was really happy you were able to reach back out of me. And MLJ is a company that I remember and forgotten about, and then re-remembered through this process of creating this presentation, 3B Man. MLJ had some great covers. I believe Lou Fine was mainly working for them, and like I said, Lou Fine, outside of Alex Schoenberg and I can't believe I can't think of his name. Kurt Swan. Those are probably my 3 favorite artists of any time period. I mean, of course, currently in current times, it'd be our George Perez. So you can kind of see I gravitate towards more realistic art as my taste. And all of them had that realism. Lou Fine, Schoenberg, of course, Kurt Swan. I just can't say enough about Kurt Swan's art. Back the quintessential Superman artist. I guess really George Perez, John Byrne.
Love John Byrne.
Yeah. I mean, but again, if you look at it, who am I naming off and you look at their art style, it tends to be very realistic. I appreciate it now more in my older age, the Rob Liefelds and Todd McFarlane's, the Stranenkos, if you want to, go back a little bit further. But yeah, it's more of those realistic ones. So anyway, with that, so what you got going on? Anything you want to plug?
Oh, well, right now, I got to do another episode of What's in the Press probably at some point this week. I'm over on my channel. And then on Friday, if anybody is so inclined, we are having another claim sale, my shop Instagram claim sale. So I wasn't going to do it, but my buddies want to do it. So we're going to do it on the 17th from, I think, 7 o'clock till probably 10 o'clock this Eastern Standard Time, mind you. If you follow me over on Instagram at Comic Doc, I'll post some notices there to give you more information on that. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, yeah, let us know. I just made a note to myself, but I'm sure I probably will not look at this. But yeah,
lots of $10 books.
Okay, IG on Instagram live sale, 7 o'clock Eastern, which would be 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. On Friday, so y'all make a note of that. Y'all go follow. I don't think I dropped your IG in the description, but I'll remedy that.
Yeah, it's just at Comic Doc.
At Comic Doc, yeah, it's pretty. It's pretty easy. Yeah, Neil Adams.
Another one.
Yeah, and probably I wasn't much of a DC reader, so that's maybe why I wasn't too much with Neil Adams. George Perez. With his work on Avengers, and then I followed him over to DC with Justice League and Wonder Woman. For Zeta, I always loved. Of course, from your I wasn't much into Conan or anything, which is what he did, but I did like a lot of his I did like his art. So but okay. And for me, so y'all go sub up.
What's going on with you, Shelby?
Comic Doctor, go sub Comic Doctor. Don't forget IG Friday claim sale at 6 Eastern. For me, I just dropped a 4-part series on wet cleaning, spine removal, things like that. A little something different from me. I'll probably dropping a little video on my dry cleaning techniques. With I believe I did a Silver Age Tales to Astonish.
Nice.
On that one, I think that's gonna be 2 parts. I'll edit and get that up sometime this week. I will be on Pop Shop Live tomorrow, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. So please go follow me over on Pop Shop Live. There's the info right there. You can just go download the app, Pop Shop Live. You can also go to the website. Use the seller code Shelby, and that helps me out quite a bit. When I get to a certain amount, we're going to do a free shipping show.
Nice.
So that will be coming up. Probably Wednesday, might do a Whatnot show. Thursday, probably be on Thunder God's channel for his auction. And then Friday will finally be here, and I'll be shipping out books, which is what I'm going to be doing after I get done with this. I got to go pack some books and get them out. So
you're not going to see Spider-Man this week?
Huh?
You're not going to see Spider-Man?
Is that dropping this week, or is it
next week? This week.
Is it this week? I go get my tickets then.
Yes.
I thought I had one more week.
Nope.
Right.
I was waiting for you to say it. I'm going to see Spider-Man No Way Home, but they didn't hear it. I said,
I thought it was. Oh, that is this week. The 17th is this week. Oh my God.
Hope you got your Christmas shopping done too.
Don't even get me started on Christmas shopping. I ain't even started yet. I want to try and I'm thinking it's like, man, I'm just gonna go hit the Goodwill. You know, that's all y'all getting. Y'all gonna get some used socks
Oh,
from the
nice.
Goodwill or something. I have no idea.
Jeff will love that.
Yeah, premieres tonight. Yeah, I always go to the Thursday night premieres here in Houston. So definitely I'll be trying to get my tickets here in just a second for Thursday night. For some reason I had in my head I had one more week, but that's what happens when we get old, right?
I know. We're all sold out here for this week. I got my tickets 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I can't believe I've let it slip up on me. Anyway, all right. Well, let us call it an evening so I can go buy my tickets.
All right.
Hey, thank you again, Comic Doctor, for coming on and helping out tonight. But with that, we're going to say peace, love, and comics. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you. Thanks, Shelby.